Welcome to Rustler's Reminiscence, stories of hope, faith, and frontier courage. Let the journey unfold.
Oscar was the only one who stayed. When I left the village, I didn't tell a soul. No note, no trail, just the creak of the old iron gate behind me and a low fog curling through the fields like it meant to follow. They say it was spring, but I don't remember flowers. Only mud, the kind that sucks your boots off and spits cold into your bones. My mother used to say the Carpathians don't forgive easy. Maybe that's why I went. Oscar followed without question. Stubborn, gray, with a spine like a saw blade and eyes that knew too much. My grandfather gave him to me the winter before the war, when everything still smelled of bread and tobacco. I was 16. By the time I left, I'd buried my mother and let the family home rot itself to pieces. Oscar had waited at the back gate every morning, like clockwork, as if he knew I wasn't built for staying. I didn't take much. A flint kit, a rust-patched pot, a wool blanket that still held my mother's scent. I tied it all to Oscar's saddle and didn't look back. The woods swallowed us in 3 steps. There's no path where we went, just a long breath between trees and the kind of silence that hums in your ears. The deeper we went, the more the air changed, denser, like walking through someone else's dream. Birds didn't sing there. Branches creaked like old men warning you off. I remember thinking, good. At the edge of my world, I had already become a ghost. They said they searched. Later, after the frost lifted and my cousin found the gate swinging in the wind. But there were no tracks, no scream, only hoofprints and broken branches where Oscar had pushed through the underbrush. They stopped at the riverbank, then vanished. What they didn't know is that I wanted to disappear. There was something in the village that had started to die in me, and I was scared it finished the job. Every room held a memory I couldn't bear. My mother in her chair, eyes dry, body still. The letter from my brother, torn and unread. The black mold creeping up the corners like it had plans of its own. So I walked. Oscar never questioned. He chewed bark and flicked his tail and followed me into places no sane person should go. I slept under pine boughs and woke to deer tracks around my feet. Some nights I cried, and some nights I didn't. I told Oscar secrets I hadn't told anyone, not even my mother before the silence took her. He just listened. That's the thing about donkeys. They don't flinch at your grief. The farther we went, the less I felt like I was leaving something behind, and more like I was heading towards something, though I couldn't say what. There was a pull in my chest like a fishhook, dragging me deeper with each breath, and I let it. By the 3rd night, I stopped counting days. By the 7th, I stopped fearing wolves. I had Oscar, and I had the hush of the trees that knew my name. The first winter came hard and early, like it had been waiting for us. Snow fell in a single night, smothering the world in silence. Trees turned to statues. My breath became a ghost that never left my side. I built a lean-to from pine boughs and prayed the wind would forget we existed. Oscar didn't complain. He never did. But I saw the way his legs trembled after the first storm. His ears drooped, his eyes dulled. At night, he huddled close, and I curled against his side, pretending it was just cold and not fear setting in. I had food, not much. Dried apples, flatbread, a pouch of hard cheese. Enough for one person to last a few weeks, if they rationed. But Oscar wasn't just anyone. He'd carried me through the woods when my legs gave out. He let me sob into his fur when the dreams came. He was more kin to me than the people I left behind. So I made a choice. I broke the bread in half, gave him the larger piece. When he hesitated, I pushed it toward his muzzle and said, "Eat, you old bastard, you earned it." He chewed slowly, eyes on me the whole time, like he understood what it meant. My fingers bled that week. The wood was frozen, my flint stubborn. I spent hours hunched over kindling, whispering curses and old prayers my grandmother once muttered when she was angry. Fire came eventually, small, fickle flames that licked the frost from my skin. I dried Oscar's fur with my coat. We shared heat like dying stars. There were nights I thought we wouldn't make it. Nights when the wind sounded like screaming. Nights I woke with my teeth chattering so hard I bit my tongue. One morning, I found Oscar collapsed beside the stream. Ice crusted the edges of his lips. His breath came in short puffs, shallow and sharp. I fell to my knees, arms around his neck, and cried so loud the trees seemed to lean in. "I swear to God," I whispered, "if you die out here, I stay. I'll become part of the snow and the silence. I won't go back." I meant it. I built a fire beside him and fed him everything I had left. I melted snow into warm water with pine needles and held it to his lips. I sang lullabies through chattering teeth, songs my mother sang before the darkness took her voice. Oscar didn't move for 2 days. Then, on the third morning, he nudged me with his nose and let out the softest bray I'd ever heard. I laughed until I sobbed, my face cracked and raw from cold, and told him, "You're worse than a man. You make me love you and then nearly kill me with it." That winter carved the girl out of me, left something leaner, meaner, but not empty. Oscar survived, and because he did, so did I. By the second spring, the forest changed. The snow melted, but the cold stayed in strange places. I'd find patches of ice clinging to rocks long after the sun had warmed everything else. The trees grew too quiet. Birds flew over but never landed. And Oscar, who'd once brayed at wind and squirrels, started acting like something was watching us. It began with the fog. Not the kind that rolls in soft and gentle, but a choking mist that oozed out of the hollows before dawn. It didn't burn off with sunlight. It just lingered, thick and gray, curling around trees like fingers. One morning, Oscar stopped walking, planted his hooves, and stared into the fog. His ears twitched. He let out a low, nervous bray. I followed his gaze and saw nothing, but I felt it, a pressure, like someone was breathing down my neck. Then I saw them. Shapes. Not men, not beasts, just tall outlines, moving slow, deliberate, like they remembered being human but had forgotten how to stop watching. They didn't walk so much as glide. I blinked, and they were gone, but the feeling stayed, in my chest, in my teeth. I should have run. Any sane person would have. But I stayed. That night, I built the fire higher. Oscar refused to lie down. He paced, circling the camp, ears pinned back and breath loud. I tried to hum, to bring some normalcy to the dark, but even my voice sounded foreign. Then, silence. No wind, no fire crackle, even Oscar stopped. And in that silence, I heard it, a soft click, like claws on rock, slow, circling. My skin turned to paper. I dove beneath the hide blanket, heart slamming, breath shallow. I whispered Oscar's name, once, twice. Nothing. I clutched the old bone charm from my grandmother's coat and did the only thing I could remember from childhood. I sang. The lullaby was old, a strange, minor tune sung to restless babies and frightened girls. My mother said it came from before, though she never said before what. The moment I sang the first line, the clicking stopped. Oscar returned before dawn, mud on his legs, eyes wide but calm. He lay beside me without a sound. The mist retreated, but I didn't sleep. After that, I sang every night, not just for comfort, but because something inside me believed the song was the only thing holding the forest back. Oscar knew it too. We didn't speak, but we understood each other. And we weren't alone anymore. I don't remember the moment exactly, just the aftermath. One morning, I woke to find them beside Oscar, 2 small children, no more than 6 or 7, crouched low in the pine needles, their skin gray with dirt, their hair matted and wild like nests. Oscar stood still as stone, eyes darting between them and me. They didn't speak, not even when I asked, gently, "Where are your parents?" They blinked in unison, wide, glassy eyes, too round, too silent. I reached out a hand. The boy flinched, teeth bared, feral. The girl sniffed the air like an animal, then tilted her head. I stepped back. I should have run. Instead, I handed them food, half a smoked rabbit. They devoured it raw, fingers twitching, knees still bent like they hadn't walked upright in years. I didn't sleep that night. I kept the fire high and the knife close. But they didn't move, just curled up near Oscar's belly, breathing slow, twitching like dogs in a dream. When dawn came, I told myself I'd walk away, that they'd find their way back to wherever they came from. I gathered my pack, whistled for Oscar. The moment I stepped past the clearing, they screamed. It wasn't human, a wail like iron twisting, like pain remembered too deeply. The boy clawed at the ground. The girl slammed her head into a tree until her forehead bled. I ran back. They stopped. Silence returned like a snapped rope. I wanted to be afraid. God knows I tried to be afraid. But something in me, something hollowed out by grief and snow, felt closer to them than I ever had to the living. So I stayed. I called the girl Mira, the boy Stas. They never spoke, but their heads would turn when I called them. They'd follow my every move, crouching, crawling, always watching. I sang. They listened. I gathered berries, showed them how to crush them for dye and for medicine. They mimicked me, like mirrors, off, but close enough to hurt. Oscar didn't like them. He'd twitch when they neared, bray low and warning, but he never bolted. He was loyal to a fault. Sometimes I'd catch the children in the dark, watching me sleep, faces inches from mine, breath slow, eyes unblinking. I should have been terrified. Instead, I felt seen. They didn't ask where I came from. They didn't look at me like a broken thing. They sat beside me, silent and still, and in that quiet, I felt like I wasn't alone in my madness. Or maybe I wasn't mad at all. Maybe I'd just finally found my place among the feral, the forgotten, and the things that didn't quite belong. We found the tree on a day that smelled like lightning. The clouds were too low. Oscar stomped with unease. Even Mira and Stas, usually silent and sharp, moved slower, like the air had teeth. It was Mira who led us to it. She'd started walking ahead more often, sniffing at roots, pressing her ear to trunks like they whispered things only she could hear. That day, she stopped dead in front of a great old beech tree, split down the middle like a wound that never closed. Inside the hollow, it was dark, deeper than it should have been, the kind of dark that watches back. Stas crawled in first, Mira followed. I shouted, but they ignored me. Then came the humming. Soft at first, rising from within the tree like breath through bone. Mira pressed her face to the bark, eyes wide and unblinking. Her hum matched the pitch exactly, a perfect echo. Her fingers began to twitch, first one, then all 10 in rhythm with the sound. I backed away. That night, I dreamed of a woman made of moss and shadows. Her body shifted with leaves. Her eyes were hollow, but her mouth moved when she spoke. They are not yours, but you are theirs. I woke to screaming. Oscar was kicking at the tree, ears flattened, teeth bared. Foam clung to his lips. He charged the hollow again and again, hooves striking bark with a fury I'd never seen in him. Mira and Stas stood nearby, their heads cocked, unmoving. Then they hissed. High, shrill, unearthly, not like children, like something trapped in their skins was finally tired of pretending. I stood between them and Oscar, heart pounding, mouth dry. I didn't know who I was protecting anymore. But I made my choice. I turned to the children and shouted, "No." No words, no anger, just a boundary I hadn't drawn before. Their faces twisted, not in rage, but hurt, confusion, like I'd broken some unspoken pact. Oscar pressed his body against mine, shaking. We didn't pack, we just ran, deeper into the hills. The humming faded behind us, but I still hear it sometimes, faint and low, when the wind dies. The children didn't follow that night, but I never believed they stayed behind. Even now, I wake to the sense of small eyes watching, of breath on my neck, of lullaby sung in voices not quite mine. I don't know what that tree was. I don't know what they are. But I know this. Oscar saved me. And something out there knows it too. The thaw came too fast. One morning, the frost was still thick on the grass. By sundown, the river had turned wild, snapping tree limbs and swallowing stones like it had something to prove. Spring wasn't blooming, it was breaking loose. Oscar hated the water, always had. He'd sidestep puddles like they were snakes. So when the banks swelled and our trail vanished beneath the rush, he hesitated. "I know," I whispered, stroking his flank, "but there's no other way." The twins didn't seem bothered. They darted ahead, leaping across slick rocks, barefoot and silent. Stas turned back once, mud streaked up his legs, and tilted his head at Oscar like he didn't understand why we waited. We made it halfway across before the mud gave out beneath us. Oscar slipped. His back leg folded beneath him with a sound like a gunshot. He brayed high and panicked, eyes rolling. I dropped everything. He was stuck in the bank, trembling, breath ragged. Foam formed at his lips again. The twins appeared beside us. Watching. Watching. Mira reached toward his leg. At first I thought she meant to help, but then her tongue slipped out, slow, deliberate, and she bent closer to the blood pooling at his hoof. "No." My voice cracked. She didn't stop. I snapped, screamed, grabbed a fallen branch and swung, not to hurt, but to make distance. They scattered like dogs startled off a carcass, retreating just far enough to crouch in the brush, blinking. Oscar wheezed. His body slumped into mine. I knelt beside him, cradling his heavy head. "It's okay," I lied. He blinked once, slow. Then again. Then, still. I think part of me died with him. I didn't move for hours, just sat there, holding his face, brushing mud from his ears. The river howled. The twins didn't come near. When the light faded, I took off his saddle, set it in the current, and watched it float away. Then I stood, walked into the river up to my chest, and screamed. It wasn't words, just noise. Pure, aching grief. I screamed until my voice was gone, until my knees buckled, until the current dragged me under and spit me back up, gasping. I walked out, soaked and hollow. The twins were waiting at the bank. They didn't speak, but they followed me again. Not close, not touching, just close enough to remind you, you're never alone. Not really. Oscar was the last piece of the world that made sense. Now all I had was them. And whatever waited in the woods ahead. They found me by accident. Two hikers, young, fresh-faced, wearing clothes too clean for real survival. I was crouched near a dead birch, gutting a rabbit with a sharpened rock when they spotted me. I didn't move, neither did the children. The hikers froze. One lifted a camera, the other whispered, "Jesus." I must have looked like a thing pulled from a grave. My skin had gone to leather. My hair was tangled with leaves, bones, feathers. I hadn't worn shoes in years. The twins flanked me, naked but painted in ash and berry juice, crouched like wolves ready to spring. I didn't say a word. The boy, Mira, started to mimic. Click, click, click. The sound of the man's flashlight turning on, perfectly timed, repeated over and over like he was learning it. The girl bared her teeth, hissed. The hikers ran. They brought others. Days later, helicopters, voices with radios, nets of noise and concern. The twins vanished into the trees when they heard the first engines. I tried to follow, but I collapsed halfway down the ridge. My legs didn't remember how to carry me anymore. When I woke, it was to fluorescent light and IVs in my arm. "Name?" someone asked. I blinked. They called me feral, said I'd been missing for nearly 8 years. My cousin identified me by the scar on my hand, the one from the old kettle back home. She cried. I didn't. They asked me what happened. I didn't answer. When they showed me photos of the children, I nodded. When they asked if they were mine, I shook my head. When they said, "Then whose are they?" I said, "The forest's." They didn't like that. They brought in doctors, caseworkers, interviews with flashing cameras, but nothing cracked through. What broke me was the separation. They found the twins 2 days later, naked, hungry but unharmed, curled beneath an overpass near the highway, holding hands. When I saw them through the glass, so clean, so wrong, I screamed, the kind of scream that makes people step back without thinking. They locked me in a room with soft walls. Mira cracked a window in her sleep. Stas bit a nurse. I carved the word Oscar into the plaster again and again until they gave me paper instead. They said the children were adjusting. They were wrong. They were waiting. It's been 3 years. I live in a small, state-run facility now. Not quite a hospital, not quite a prison. The walls are beige. The windows only open 3 inches. The staff call me Lena, like it means anything anymore. They think I'm getting better. I nod, take my pills, color between the lines, pretend not to hear the hum that starts at dusk. The twins live in a different wing. They call them Mira and Stas now, too. That part stuck. A therapist says it's attachment identity, a coping mechanism from prolonged trauma. I don't argue. Let them think they're right. But the children haven't changed. They don't talk, not really. They echo. They watch. They wait. Last winter, a night guard found Mira standing on her hands in the hallway at 3 a.m., not moving, eyes wide, smile stretched ear to ear. She didn't blink for over 7 minutes. Stas once pulled the fire alarm with his teeth, didn't even flinch at the sound. Social workers want to separate them now. Individualized care plans, they say. Therapy in stable homes. They talk like people do when they're afraid of admitting they don't know what they're dealing with. When I visit, the twins cling to me, like shadows, like vines. When I leave, they cry. Not loud, not with tears, just this high, pulsing whine in their throats, like animals in mourning. I told them once, "They're going to take you." They shook their heads in sync. "No," Mira whispered, her first word in months. "No," Stas echoed. I still dream of Oscar. Sometimes he's whole again, trotting through a meadow. Other times he's in the river, eyes pleading, leg twisted. I always wake up crying. But it's not sadness, it's memory. It's the only part of me that still feels true. I miss the fire, the dirt under my nails, the silence of trees that knew my name. Tomorrow, they've scheduled another visitation. I'll wear the gray sweater they gave me. I'll sit in the white room under the buzzing lights. I'll take the crayon they hand me, and I'll sing. The lullaby. The one my grandmother taught me. The one I sang into the dark to keep the forest at bay. I don't know what will happen, but I know something will answer. Because the children were never mine. I was theirs, and the forest never lets go what it calls its own.
Thanks for riding with us through another tale from the Old West. If this story touched your heart, don't forget to like the video and subscribe. More adventures are waiting on the trail ahead. See you next time.